this is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the Lenovo IdeaPad U300s. This is Lenovo's first Ultrabook, a concept that we first discussed with the Asus ZenBook UX31. That's Intel's initiative to get Windows PC manufacturers to make notebooks that are a lot like the MacBook Air, 0.6 inches or 0.8 inches thin and less, low power ULV Intel Core i5 and i7 CPUs, SSD drives, very quick boot times, zippy machines that are super duper thin and light, generally weighing 3 pounds or less, just like the Lenovo right here. Machine has a 13.3-inch gloss display with 1366 by 768 resolution, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, large trackpad, very comfortable keyboard, and it can handle things like Photoshop, MS Office, all things internet, you name it, pretty much everything except for seriously intensive 3D things. The U300s looks a lot like a skinnier version of Lenovo IdeaPad U260 that we reviewed at the beginning of 2011. That was a pretty thin notebook itself too, and it had that unique book-like design. It looked like a journal book or almost like something that belonged in your library on the shelf more than a notebook computer. And this one indeed is the same. It's just a very skinny version of that. They've also made some improvements. We had some niggles with the U260. It had relatively short battery life, about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and the fan was always running. They were a little overly cautious with making sure the CPU didn't get too hot. This guy right here, the fan is also, from the minute you turn you can hear it, but it's a relatively low volume, just a little shh in the background. Those of you who want perfect silence, that might bug you, but otherwise, there it is. If you've been playing Flash video, say Crackle videos or Hulu or something like that for about 20 minutes, you'll hear the fan kick it up though, and it is a bit noisier than the Asus ZenBook or the MacBook Air, which tends to be incredibly silent, though also hotter on the bottom than either of the other two notebooks. The Lenovo can get warm. Typically, it's about 90 degrees at the bottom if it's working moderately hard. And that's warmer than the ZenBook, but it's in the comfort zone. It's certainly fine. It says Lenovo's breathable keyboard, and that means it dissipates heat up through the keyboard without getting too hot, typically about 85 degrees Fahrenheit on the keyboard. As we take a look around the machine, close it first, and you'll see, well, there it is, that very book-like design. It's very pretty. This edge, not that it's not machined well, because it is, but it's a very abrupt edge, and it can be a little sharp against your hands, especially the bottom one if you're resting your hand on the trackpad. We have a little LED light over here that flashes to let you know that the system's asleep. And on this side, we have the 3.5mm stereo headphone jack, combo mic jack here, USB 3.0 port, full-size HDMI, and that's the power. And on this side we have a single USB 2.0 port and the heat vents, and here's the Think Vantage button. This is the little one that, or one key recovery, this is the one that saves your butt if your computer happens to crap out on you and you need to do a recovery. Very clean lines in the back hinge over here. And the bottom, no vents, no nothing, just some rubber feet. If you rip off the rubber feet, there are teeny weeny little Phillips head screws there. And we suppose you could probably break into this notebook, but really nothing is designed to be user upgradable here. You have 4 gigs of RAM, you have your 256 gig SSD drive on our high-end model, and 128 gig on the lower-end model. And there's the lid. As you can see, it does show fingerprints, even though this is metal. This is all aluminum. It picks up hand oil, which is unfortunate. And the MacBook Air and the ZenBook do not do that. Lenovo logo in nice contrasting metal here. Now how quick does it wake up? Let's see. That's pretty quick. So very fast resume times thanks to the SSD drive. The Lenovo IdeaPad U300s is available in 2 configurations. For $10.99 or maybe $10.49, Lenovo isn't finalized pricing yet. You can get this with a 1.6 gigahertz Intel Core i5 ULV CPU. That's just a little bit slower than the Core i5 1.7 gigahertz you get on the MacBook Air and on the Asus ZenBook. It has a 128 gig SSD, same as the competitors, 4 gigs of DDR3 RAM, a webcam, the obvious 2 USB ports that we took a look at, Wi-Fi 802.11 BGN Bluetooth, and the large capacitive glass trackpad. For $1,500, you can get the Core i7 ULV CPU running at 1.8 gigahertz. That's the same as the higher-end Asus ZenBook and MacBook Air. And you get a 256 gig SSD, still 4 gigs of RAM. The notebook should be available very soon. What we have here is a very, very late prototype. And everything's running perfectly on this. We've had no problems, but benchmark numbers are a little bit lower than we expected on PCMark Vantage, and Lenovo tells us there were some performance issues with some of the pre-release models. I expected to benchmark about the same as the ZenBook and the MacBook Air, which is say about 10,000 on PCMark Vantage. It uses Intel HD 3000 graphics as integrated graphics, and it's very capable, Intel's HD solution, for anything 2D, video playback, even 1080p, using the HDMI port. And you can do some casual 3D gaming, some less demanding games. No Crisis here, no Crisis 2 for sure. Left 4 Dead 2 at medium to low settings, yes, that kind of thing. Lenovo has a 13.3-inch display. It's a gloss display, not ultra glary though, and it's fairly bright, though not as bright as the 450 nit Asus ZenBook, and we'll show you it side by side in a minute. Resolution is your standard 1366 by 768, and that's a bummer. It's a little less competitive there because the ZenBook is running at 1600 by 900 and the Mac runs at 1440 by 900 pixels. So you're getting a rather average view in terms of what you can see on screen, how much stuff, how big a window you can open up there. The display does have really nice color and good contrast. Viewing angles are okay. If you go off to either side, glare is going to start to get you and you'll get some loss. And there's the usual top to bottom for TN panel loss of contrast. So it's one of those displays like most notebooks where you're going to angle it just right for your viewing pleasure. And you're probably not going to share this with somebody else unless you're real close and comfy with them. Now I'll compare it with the ZenBook. And here we have them side by side. And you can see the difference in display brightness. They are both set to maximum brightness right now. The ZenBook being the brighter. ZenBook has the brushed aluminum look, whereas this has a kind of matte, more simple finish. They both have oversized trackpads. Now, there have been some complaints about the ZenBook's trackpad, but once I updated the firmware and the drivers, I find it works just as well as Lenovo's. In fact, multi-touch works a little bit better than it does on Lenovo. Keyboard, you get the black Island chiclet-style keyboard that Lenovo uses on their IdeaPads here. And we'll bring that a little closer so you can see it. So you've got the black plastic keys here with a little curve at the bottom versus the very square ones on the ZenBook. I do like the IdeaPad keyboard better. I'll definitely say that. Not horrible on the Asus, but a little bit better. Now, the keyboard on the IdeaPad is not exactly ThinkPad wonderful. I mean, nobody makes a better keyboard than Lenovo on their ThinkPad series. And it's not that they didn't try hard with this, it's just that it's a problem with something that's this thin. You don't have enough room for a whole lot of key travel. But given what they had to work with, they did a pretty good job. Now we've got a sandwich here of ultra-thin notebooks. On the bottom we have the Lenovo IdeaPad U300s. In the middle we have the Asus ZenBook UX31. And on the top we have the 2011 MacBook Air 13-inch model. So you can see they're all very skinny. Now the Asus and the Mac look thinner because they have tapered sides, so it gives the illusion of thinness, whereas Lenovo maintains the same thickness, about 2/3 of an inch, actually a little bit less, about 0.6 inches, all the way through, but at their thickest points they're all actually quite similar. As we move around, you can see, all very thin, all just about the same size. What do we like about the Lenovo over the MacBook Air? Well, we love the USB 3.0 port and the full-size HDMI port. In fact, that's even more convenient than the ZenBook that uses a mini HDMI port, so you don't need a special cable or an adapter to use HDMI. What's missing versus the ZenBook? Well, you got a low-resolution display here, and Asus includes an Ethernet adapter, USB Ethernet adapter, so you can have Ethernet on the road. Lenovo, they want you to go buy your own. Asus includes a nice slipcase. Lenovo charges $20 extra for that. And the ZenBook also has a mini VGA port with a VGA adapter dongle in the box, so handy for those of you who still have legacy VGA projectors, monitors, what have you. Experientially, this feels like a very peppy machine, and it feels on par with its competitors. It's amazing what a difference a generation can make, even from the U260. This feels fast. So you can see here there's a Windows Experience Index scores, which are pretty good, and as you'd expect, the graphics score is going to be the lowest at 4.5, but we did get a 6.8 for the CPU. This is the 1.8 gigahertz model, by the way, with the 256 gig SSD. And the SSD drive scored 7.1. Didn't get a perfect 7.9 like the 128 gig SSD in the ZenBook, but hey, 7.1 is pretty good on a maximum scale of 7.9. Machine has Intel Centrino N1030 Wi-Fi, and that's 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. We found that if we changed the power settings, we got better throughput, and that's also a combo 2-in-1 card that's shared with the Bluetooth card, so you could probably be able to increase your throughput a bit if you turn off Bluetooth if you're having any problems. Though in general, things have worked well for us. We're going to check out a little 1080p video performance now. And you can hear the speaker volume is fairly good for a small notebook. Not as amazing as the Bang & Olufsen speakers on the ZenBook, but I would say better than the MacBook Air. And you can adjust the volume settings without hitting the FN key. They went with an Apple-like approach there. And that's maximum volume. Battery life on the Lenovo U300s has been about 5.5 hours for us when we've been kind of torture testing it. That's about a half an hour less than the ZenBook by ASUS under the same conditions, and about an hour short of the MacBook Air. And that's with Wi-Fi turned on, screen brightness set to 65%, using the net, and playing looping videos for an hour of that test period time. So definitely much better than the U260. So that's the Lenovo IdeaPad U300s. It'll be available soon, again for about $1,100 to $1,500, depending if you want the i5 or the i7 CPU. Given that there is more of a performance spread with the 1.6 gigahertz that Lenovo uses, it would be understandable to go to the 1.8 gigahertz model and double your SSD capacity at the same point. We do wish that Lenovo had gone with the 1.7 gigahertz that's used in the MacBook Air and also the ASUS ZenBook for that lower price point, but it's attractive, it's unique looking, and for those of you who need more power, Lenovo is going to have their U300, no S at the end. S for them signifies it's their thin and light version. U300 is going to have a Core i7 option, up to 8 gigs of RAM, a little faster machine, and then there'll be the U400, also pretty thin, not as thin as this, but like the U260, and with the same attractive book-like design, and that one's even going to have an internal optical drive for those of you who really need more of an all-in-one machine. This, of course, does not have an internal optical drive. None of the Ultrabooks do, just like the MacBook Air. There's no room for one. Do we like the Lenovo? Yes, we do. It's very well made, it's sturdy, it's attractive, there's very little flex anywhere in the display panel, it's ultra rigid on the bottom. We do think that ASUS is winning this particular round, though, with their higher spec machine for the same price. You get a little faster CPU at the lower end, and you get a higher resolution display. You also get some more goodies in the box. And versus the MacBook Air, the Lenovo looks good for you Windows people who are thinking about buying a MacBook Air, just put Windows on it, because, well, this is a little bit cheaper, and you get a USB 3.0 port as well as HDMI. And it also supports WiDi, wireless display, that Intel technology. If you have a $99 adapter for your TV, you can stream wirelessly to your TV. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Visit our website for a full review of the Lenovo IdeaPad U300s.